Sometimes you have stories that just kind of interest you, and the director of The Flash just had a slew of really bad takes. I'm actually a pretty big defender of the Flash movie. I definitely like it a lot more than other people, but the director came out recently on a podcast, I believe, and talked about why he thinks the movie failed, and he just needs to stop talking. I also can't imagine that James Gunn's very happy with him right now with the amount he's been talking about The Brave and the Bold, which at this point he's still attached to direct. He's been talking about it a lot, kind of giving contradicting information, stuff that doesn't make the studio look very good. I just can't imagine anybody's very happy with him right now. It just seems a bit like he's talking out of his ass. And even then, he got The Brave and the Bold because of basically a vote of overconfidence from the studio. I think they thought that The Flash would very much succeed. It had very good test screenings. It seemed like it was going to be a big hit, but for a number of factors, which I would say one of them is that James Gunn basically announced that none of this shit would matter. So that kind of completely undercuts it. Ezra Miller's behavior clearly had a big impact on it. There's just so much bad juju that went into this movie before it came out, but Andy Muschietti had a very out-of-touch take with why he thinks it flopped. And basically what he said it comes down to is he thinks that the movie wasn't for quadrants, thinks it didn't appeal to a vast majority of people, which I think what he's right about is that when you make a $200 million movie, you kind of need to appeal to everybody. But he had a very bizarre take of basically saying that people don't care about the Flash as a character and that women had no interest in seeing this movie and that's why it failed. That's a very odd thing to say. Very odd to kind of lay the blame at the feet of the audience when I think that they were kind of inundated with a lot of information that made this movie just seem unappealing to them. For a number of reasons, the audience just wasn't interested in seeing this. Although it worked out for me, I really enjoyed it. I think it's fair to take a look at the factors that went into what made this movie fail. And I don't think that he accurately assessed any of it. On the count of saying that the Flash isn't a popular character, that makes no sense to me. He's one of the most iconic DC characters ever created. Vast amount of popularity for years. He had a 9-season series on the CW, which they don't do that for a character nobody cares about. That was extremely popular on the CW. Large numbers of ratings, especially viewership numbers that kind of topped records. That was a very popular show. Even beyond that, The Flash is just a very iconic DC character. He's one of their most iconic DC characters with a very iconic set of powers. And when you're directing a movie called The Flash, I think it's so odd to say this character has no popularity or kind of throwing the character under the bus when, dude, you were the director of his movie. What are you doing? I think he's just making a mistake of saying that The Flash isn't popular just in retrospect of this movie not doing well. When pretty much every condition, Warner Brothers, everything surrounding this movie pretty much set it up to fail. The star, like really, everything came together to make this movie not do well. When I literally think if the same exact movie would have come out 5 years prior to that, I think it would have been $1 billion movie. But you have a dead universe, you have a very controversial star, you have a universe that doesn't really reward anybody's long-term investment. And just forget that, like DC fans kind of get screwed over at every turn. It just seems like this movie, to a certain point, was appealing to nobody because of how twisted out of shape the franchise was by the time it came out. And even though it tackled the multiverse stuff, it was written, conceived, filmed, all of that before the multiverse craze. The movie didn't actually come out until after all the multiverse craze. Came out a year and a half after No Way Home, over a year after Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, came out like 2 weeks after Across the Spider-Verse. Just horrible timing on pretty much every front. It was overshadowed by a different multiverse movie, and it had all of these other issues that pretty much just set it up to get the worst possible reception. I don't think that it could have gone worse. And it's really unfortunate because I do find this movie to be extremely underrated, wildly entertaining, but I see why it didn't do well. And I think that this should be very obvious to anybody who knows any of the surrounding circumstances of this movie coming out. Michael Keaton's also just overall a much less well-known Batman at this point than an actor like Christian Bale. If they had Christian Bale, it probably would have made $1 billion. But with Michael Keaton, unless you've been watching them for a long time, you grew up with these Michael Keaton Batman movies like I did, I'd even say that Michael Keaton's Batman, it's before my time, well before my time. But because I had the box set, I grew up loving and watching those movies. That can't be said for everybody my age, most of the target demographic for a superhero movie like this. And him saying the Flash isn't a popular character, that's just crazy talk. And it's a weird thing to say as the director of the upcoming Batman series. I don't think that he's going to end up directing this movie if I had to guess. I think that they were wildly out of their depth with overconfidence confidence. And if I had to guess, they're pulling the plug and he's going to move on to something else. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. I'd love to hear. I'm GM Light. Have a good one.